Welcome to the Betancur Method podcast, where we explore leadership, mindset, and the systems that shape who we're becoming. Today, we have a very special guest with us. We have Craig Winger. He is a licensed, certified life coach, neuro-linguistic programming practitioner, and entrepreneur. Craig, it's good to have you here, man.
Well, it's kind of a pleasure to be here. It really is.
Absolutely. It's been amazing. I love how we met. We met at a networking event.
Yes.
While people were. It was whenever they were coming out with their businesses.
Right.
We met in the room. We started talking. I just overheard NLP, and I'm like, hey, that's the guy I need to talk to. So it was great to have you here, and I love what you do. I'm into neuro-linguistic programming as well, and we're talking a little bit about what that is. But moving forward, man, just so we could get a good foundation, what is NLP, or what is neuro-linguistic programming?
Neuro-linguistic programming is what I call it a background, if you will, of some of the things humans do to do better. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that it's all psychological. It doesn't mean that it's all based on food or anything else like that. But it pulls from people their activities, and basically you give them another way, the vehicle that they run,
right,
to lift themselves up, to open their eyes more, to focus. There's a whole multitude of things that most people could do better if they were helped to do better. Mm-hmm. And that's really to me, some people say, oh, you're a change agent. Well, sometimes I am. But the thing is change is good, but there are other things that are even better than that.
Right.
And so those are some of the things that I also work with.
That's
people.
Amazing. It's some very powerful stuff. Now, how does that differ from maybe the psychology nowadays?
Well, psychology is very important. Don't get me wrong, but psychology tends to go backwards and help you feel better or learn how to forgive all the past events that are bothering you now.
Right.
And when you get some of those released and you feel better about it, then it's much easier to go forward. Mm-hmm. Well, NLP starts you from where you are. And yes, you can look at that other stuff and forgive everything and all that other stuff, but it's you're focusing on your future, not just next week, not just next year, but even longer, 4 or 5 years out there.
Now, why is that so important, though, to be able to figure out where you are and figure out where you want to be? Like, why is that so big?
Well, one of the greatest things about being a human is that if you have in your mind, not in your ego, but in your mind, where you want to be or what you would really like to contribute to, how you would like to embrace something, or how would you like to expand something or make things way better than they are now, that purpose has a strength to it to actually help you move all of that forward. And that's the value of NLP. And then in itself, it helps you move and get some of these things that are limiting you right now out of the way or modified to make it easier or more fun for you to move in that new direction.
And how do you start that, though? How is it whenever you meet somebody and you're able to wanting to help them become this person, wanting to have them change certain things in their life? Like, how do you start that off?
Well, first thing you got to do is, if you want to make a change happen, first thing you have to do is figure out where you are right now. I'm talking in this minute. And you say, okay, these are all the things I need to forgive that have happened in the past, including forgiving all the people that may have contributed to them and gotten you into that, whatever it was. Then you have to say, okay, these are some things that I'm missing. I'm not very good at. These are the things I am good at. These are my strengths. Once you identify all your strengths and the things that you would like to work more with them, then you start blooming them, if you will, and making them more powerful so that you can see, oh, well, if I can do that a little bit better, I could go over there and do that much more better.
So the first step is self-reflection.
Big time.
Yeah.
Because you have to be comfortable, not because it's bad or wrong, but you have to be comfortable and that you're still here in spite of all that stuff you dealt with from the past. And you just forgive it all, let it go. And there you may find there's some things that you learned back then that, oh, maybe I got to do some up here. But there's still some stuff that you might be able to do. But if you've already forgiven yourself and everybody else of all that, it makes it much more usable.
Now, that sounds, to be honest with you, that sounds a little bit easier said than done, to be able to forgive. Because, I mean, I could only think about personally wherever I've gone through some things, or I've had people maybe hurt me in the past, and it's like, okay, yeah, we'll forgive them. Okay, well, it's kind of hard. It doesn't sound that easy.
I won't say it's hard. I will say that for some people, it will take more time than others. Not everybody is, if your past was in a very limited scope, from your family, your culture, who were in or else, limited what you could do. You have to figure out a way to open that up a little bit, because that's where you begin to move forward, is when you begin to open up those limiting things. Now, there are other people who have had wild and crazy backgrounds, but once they get focused, they can really just take off because they have a lot of different experiences they can maybe use to go.
I love that you said that, because I know literally right before this we talked about focus. So just to mention to everybody else, I watched this thing, and it was this monk, and he was doing this TED talk, and I loved it, and it was so interesting where he mentioned that people nowadays aren't taught how to focus. So that's why they're coming out with like these learning disabilities or anxiety, ADHD, and it's like they're all over the place. Well, it's interesting, but whenever I was in school, I didn't have a class that taught me how to focus or how to like, hey, put your mind into one thing, do that, go after that. So how do we do that?
Well, focus is just one aspect of your mind. That it's a very important one, don't get me wrong. But the real issue for most people is their perspective. If you're flying around in your car on the street, you have a very low-level perspective of what you're doing. But if all of a sudden you're up in the air, okay, and looking down, and you can see left and right, 190 degrees, and you can see, oh, I didn't know that was there. I didn't know that was there. You see all these things
zoom
from this,
out,
your perspective is different. Like, I didn't know those resources were even here. And so you say, this focus that I've had is limiting me on not just what's available, but what I can possibly link into or connect with in another realm. And the focus isn't about staying narrow and not going. It's learning how to look at it all and saying, okay, this is where we get our best shape or best gain, if you will, from being focused.
Right.
Okay, so you don't want to limit yourself with the focus. You want to learn how to have your perspective bigger, so you can do it. When you're flying from 40,000 feet, like when I was in the Air Force, I loved flying that high. You could it was beautiful. So we all have our ranges of possibility, and I think that even climbing a tree as a kid opened me up more, starting at 8 and going up 20 feet, and then going up 30 and 40 and 50 and 60 feet up in the air. It took me a few years to get that high, but I really had a higher level of trust of my physical form, and I could see everything else coming around, so I could get out of the way and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's really, focus is a good word, but you have to recognize you have to have all this other stuff available.
Perspective.
Yeah.
So to be able to focus, you zoom out, you see what's around you, you get a lot more conscious about your surrounding, where you're at, and then also you're able to kind of go back and almost zoom in and have a little bit of a more.
But you know what's out there you can pull in.
Right.
If you don't know that, you're missing the possibilities of what's really going to work.
And is that why? What is it? Chunking up and chunk down in neurolinguistic programming, or it's kind of like to whenever you're so like scattered, you got okay, what's the big picture, and then to get a little bit more in depth, you start chunking down to okay, well, let me start seeing the smaller things that I could work on.
Right, but those things you can work on with your strengths, you can move through faster.
Right. Okay. I love that. That's amazing. So we also talked a little bit about hypnosis. Now, some people have seen the kind of mainstream hypnosis where they kind of turn people into a zombie and and they start making them do whatever they want. What really is hypnosis?
Hypnosis is just a way that people can refocus on their internal mind and not pay attention to what's going on around them, but just narrowing down long enough to where you can listen to that unconscious part of your mind. That part is deep and in there. Very few people pay attention to it that much. Your subconscious mind does pretty good for some people and better for others, but the only way you can really begin to feel that you're doing your best is when all of the mind is accessible. And the only way you can get that accessibility in place is when you learn how to either meditate, hypnosis. There are other things that they have come out with that are equally that, but you have to learn how to shut down what's going on out here to focus.
Right.
And our egos and our all stuff, they just need all the noise. Okay? And they make that stuff, and there's nothing wrong with your ego. It's just that a lot of us never really learned how to tell it to quiet down. There's nothing wrong with the ego. It's just that we are not skilled enough to be able to say, okay, enough of that. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't want to be dragged through everything that the ego says you do because it's all based on past. Your ego is all based on past. Every decision it makes is based on past experiences. And what's going on now may be not fit with what you did in the past.
Right.
So that's why.
Nah, that totally makes sense. I love that. So if you're, let's say for myself, to get a little personal, I wouldn't say there's levels of addiction, right? There's levels of addiction when it comes to drugs, to TV, to pornography, to all these different things. I think one of the things for me that I really want to, I've tried my best to try to get over it, and I've tried my best to overcome. I went cold turkey for a while. I've done different types of things when it comes to sugar. Now, from what I've heard sugar is pretty addicting. And there's some studies out there on rats and even some on humans where it's like they've shown that sugar is even more addicting than cocaine or some opioid drugs, which is crazy to me. So one of the things I think for me, let's say if you were able to help someone like myself, wanted to get into better shape or wanted to get healthier, how would you help me overcome that sugar addiction, if you will?
Wow. That's quite an issue. And I'm human.
Of course.
And I have some sugar right down here. No. But the thing is there are different kinds of sugar, number one. And the fructoses that are in the fruits and in some of the vegetables are not as rough on you as the cane sugars. Okay, they're still sugars. Don't get me wrong. And if you have to cut out all of it, then you have to cut it out. But you can cut back on it. Even cutting back on it 50% is a huge gain.
Yeah.
Okay, and if you get to the point where you find something that you can physically do to burn it off, like go for a 5-mile hike every day, period. Okay, you can burn off that sugar a lot easier than you can anything else. And so if you still want to have your fructose, say I have my apples and my bananas and my strawberries and my mangoes and my blueberries, I take more sugar. In fact, 95% of my sugar I take is in fruit. But I don't have diabetes, so that's not an issue for me. But I also have a lot of physical exercise that I've been doing for quite a few years. And it's, even when I can't do it, I cut back on my intake of my fruit.
Yeah. And is there some good techniques, let's say, in the NLP world to help overcome just an addiction period?
Sure. There are things you can do with hypnosis to do that. And people say, what? You can take and train yourself by various vehicles, and that's one of them, okay, is to get on a diet. There are some diets out there that don't sound like you're going to lose any weight, but you do. And it's because you actually take your body and put it into a new structure of what you're doing. And when you do that and you don't exceed what you're supposed to do with it, you can actually do pretty well. And if you have diabetes, though, you can't.
Right.
There's a whole nother ballgame.
Yeah.
But most of the people that I hang out with like sugar stuff, but they're all hikers at a minimum. Some of them do even more. But the thing is when you're as old as I am and you're walking 5-6 miles a day, it's like, okay, you can burn a lot of sugar off in 5 miles.
Right.
So that helps a lot.
I love that. How have you used those NLP techniques and just really any experiences in your life that you've used to help you overcome your own mental abilities or traumas that you had in your life?
Well, I was in Vietnam for 17 months, over a 17-month period, and I had acquired some PTSD, and my friend, the psychologist, Lance Galf, was the one who detected the PTSD, and so he used the NLP and hypnosis together to get me, if you will, out of the tension that I was in. And that really helped me in teaching classes.
Right.
I was teaching middle school. And it worked out much better for me in being able to just communicate and talk with people. I didn't have the grip, if you will, on my head. And it worked out really well. And so that's how I got involved in NLP and hypnosis, was because I knew it worked on me. And I don't have nearly as much of an impact as other people have from those things. I've helped people with it in my business with them.
That's amazing.
Not everybody needed it, but the thing is that's a basis for how to make what I call a big jump.
Right.
Okay.
So a brief synopsis, how do you help somebody overcome PTSD?
Well, first off, you have to get them to recognize the connection between this tension that you're going through or whatever it is that's bothering him. And there are a lot of things that are triggered from it. And but once they recognize that and you say, okay, if I could help you lighten that up, that tension up, and most of the tension is in your neck and your shoulders. And if you could,
so it has to do a lot with your body as well, right?
Yeah,
not just like mental.
No, it's not just mental. It's physical too, because there are restrictions in your body in this part right here in your neck that can cause tension on your hearing, cause a tension on your blood flow. It's like, oh, okay. So it has a lot of things it does to you that you may not be aware of. But once you learn how to soften your day, that's the way I look at it.
I like that.
Okay. Once you learn how to do that in a very short period of time, it only takes about 10 minutes of doing it. Say if you could do it 3 times a day, just for 10 minutes, just soften yourself. You'd be surprised how everything will calm down. And that's really, to me, was wonderful to be able to do
amazing.
That. Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I'm here right now, as far as I'm concerned.
And that could be able to help a lot of people. And I know I mentioned this, there was this podcast with Tony Robbins, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
And he talked about how Tony Robbins, huge NLP, he might not talk about it, but big NLP guy, been doing it for years. And he mentioned how he did this clinical study. And it just blew my mind. He did this clinical study where he had all these PhD doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists and all this great stuff. And they saw how the drugs that they would prescribe people for depression, that they had about a success rate about, let's say, around 30% or so. And then they had Tony Robbins come in and use some of the techniques and with neuro-linguistic program and just everything else that he's learned over time. And there was somewhere around the 80 to 90% success rate with depression.
Right.
How is that possible?
Well, you're still dealing with in depression and NLP and all this stuff are still dealing with those parts of your mind that are, what's the word, somewhat out of your control, like your ego, okay? And once you learn to how to do small things with it, you can gradually gain the traction, if you will, to move away from that issue, that the tensions get so tight that you can't even think about things that you want to think about. That's one of the things about it. It's you actually get frozen in how you want to respond to things. So a lot of people don't realize that you have the capacity to control a lot of things in your body mentally if you know how to keep it smooth and running softly.
Right.
And that's really what it's about.
That's amazing. That's amazing. You also talked a little bit about, you've mentioned a lot about connectivity. And you also mentioned earlier when we talked privately about how you're able to help a lot of people overcome something or even just learn something quicker by connecting, what you say, around three times, connecting something about 3 times. Explain that for us.
Well, your brain, everybody's brain, not just mine, you have to experience things 1 or 2 times to be able to remember it for at least a day and then take a test on it, okay? But not everybody is good with 1 or 2. Actually, very few people are good with 1 or 2. There are people, though, that have learned to make a 3rd and a 4th connection in the brain, and then it's easy to recall. So when you're reading a book and there's something in there you need to remember, you say, oh, I didn't know that. And that's connected to that over there. And, oh, my God, I've seen that over there. If you've seen it or watched it or let it impress you 3 or more times, you won't ever forget it, okay? And that's the great thing about learning things or talking in a classroom or talking with other friends about something you missed or heard about or something like that.
Right.
The more you talk and can see how it fits in other places, and you can have that, see that in your mind, it's there. It's not going away.
Is that why if you could read something once and remember it for the rest of your life, and then you could start reading something just whatever once a day, you might not remember it for the rest of your life because you're able to connect, hey, this is actually applies in this way and that way, and it kind of comes together. And I've done that before where like I've literally read like I love to read my Bible, so I read one scripture. And it's like the first time I read it, and I remember the first time of my life. I never forget it. Like it's just not leaving because it just impacted me so much, and I was able to connect it through with like my marriage, with my personal life, with my physical, all these great things.
So if you can make any connections in your brain about the past, now, or the future, with whatever it is you see, even if it's not for you, but it's for somebody else, or you're going to share it with somebody else, you're going to remember it.
Right.
Okay. And that's the great thing about your capacity. Everybody's capacity is that way. Even people who think that they're not that smart, they've never been taught how to make those connections. And that's a shortcoming we have in the system. Okay. But
so it's not that they're not smart or intelligent. It's just they haven't been taught or
how to do
right
that.
way.
Right. So, I remember doing things in school and I couldn't remember them. But now I know why I couldn't. And now I can remember, but it happens, and that's unfortunate. But not all of our educational systems and our family that raised us have that background on how to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky. I had parents who, like my dad would go outside and put brakes on the vehicle, and he expected us to come there and see how to do it and do it on the other one on the other side and all this other stuff. So we not only had to learn about it, we had to do it.
Right.
So those connections I still remember how to do that.
Awesome. So why isn't so many more therapists, psychologists, all these different, people doing these techniques and learning this stuff to help people better?
Well, some are. I mean, some psychologists do use hypnosis. Not all of them, but some of them do. And the ones that do, part of that hypnosis process is the connections, okay? And usually whoever is doing it with you knows what you have to work on, and they can make those connections in that hypnosis for you while you're under. Because once your consciousness is turned off, like it is in hypnosis, your subconscious and your unconscious mind link really well. They do a really good job. So to me, that's a really good plus.
Right.
And once you get it in there, it's going to stay.
It's going to stick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting way to look at our education, our upbringing, whatever. I mean, you know, I was lucky. My parents wanted all of us kids in the family to learn an instrument, and that was a major thing for me because my brother had already been playing his instrument for a year and a half, and I was envious. So I got to choose my instrument, and I started playing it. And it's just like, once you learn how to do that, there are multiple things that learning how to do something physical do to your mental case. And that is, you learn how to challenge yourself and continue to learn. The more everything you learn in music, every week I got a new piece I had to learn and learn it well because I had to present it a week later. So you had to learn all these things. Every one of these was a challenge.
Right.
And when you learn how
challenges help you learn.
And when you learn how to, and you're successful at it. Now, 100% of the time, I wasn't as good as I was supposed to be. But the thing is over a period of 8 years, I got pretty good.
Yeah.
So people say, what does that do? I said, well, when you learn how to do something that's a challenge, like that, even if it's just a piece of music, just a small challenge, you adopt challenges as fun. Okay.
I love that, man.
And when you get to the motivation of liking challenges, oh, let me try that. Okay. You jump on it.
Right.
And so people say,
attracts you.
I love challenges. People say, how do you do that? I said, it's not how I do it. It's the mental process that triggers me to jump somewhere and have some fun with it.
I love that. So, Craig, as we close off here, if you could leave the audience with one challenge or even just one mindset shift, what would that be?
We as humans are gifted. You have to understand that's my perspective. Okay, not everybody would agree with me, but I think that we all have more capabilities to learn more and do more and feel more if we decide to embrace challenges and just start with small ones. You don't have to do everything all the time, but once you get one, say you've never made pancakes before, but you got a pancake mix. I'm going to do that. And the next time you do it, say, well, what happened if I put cinnamon in that? Oh, man, that's pretty good.
Experimenting.
Yeah. You start testing yourself to see if you can make this even better. Yeah. So you start out like that, okay? And people say, well, yeah, you start out doing that easier. But the thing is we're not raised in many environments where self-testing ourselves is the norm.
Right.
We use our schools and our parents to test us, when in fact we can actually do it ourselves and have a lot of fun.
It's incredible.
Doing it.
It's incredible. I love that. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
So I appreciate you being on the podcast today, Craig. Hopefully we'll have you back next time. So
Okay.
thank you.
All right. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Awesome.